Hello, my name's Ria Bales and I'm the Managing Director of Bales Partners Consulting, and today I'm joined by Nicholas Wardle, who is the 2020 Internal Communicator of the Year. Added to that, Nicholas is also a member of the Engage for Success Steering Committee and also the Institute of Internal Communications London Committee member. Nicholas, your real enthusiasm lays in the employee experience, doesn't it?
It does, and thank you for such a flattering introduction, Ria.
Earlier on in the series, I spoke to Mike Sharples, who I know that you know from Brand Experiences, and I was speaking with Mike about the importance of the link between employee experience and customer experience. And that was a really interesting conversation, but I guess maybe we could touch then on how do you really engage people to do their best if we think about the employee experience like that?
I would look at it in two ways. The first, I would look at it in terms of strategic look, perhaps if you were writing a strategy, some of the things that you would put into it. And the second way I would look at it is on more of a personalised level, personalising the employee experience, if you will. So look at it from an organisational wide strategic point of view. As you so kindly mentioned, I'm a member of the Engage for Success movement. And for those unfamiliar with Engage for Success, about a decade ago now, David McLeod and Nita Clark were invited to Number 10, had conversations with the Prime Minister, came out with some funding to create the movement, did some great research, and off the back of that came the 4 enablers of employee engagement, which have been pretty much unchallenged for a decade. It's how I start my engagement strategies. So if I talk very briefly about what they are, and if you want to unpick any of those, feel free to ask. And they're never in any particular order, but there's the strategic narrative, which is the story of the organisation, where it's come from, where it is now, where it's going. The story, by and large, should be told by the senior leaders who need to be visible. Number 2, integrity. This one is often forgotten about. This is not having a say-do gap. This is having values that mean something. You should recruit on your values. If people don't act in accordance to your values, you should move them on from your organisation. Third, engaging managers. Very difficult to get right, and I'm sure it's part of your remit in your consultancy to support managers, to support their people, to coach, to stretch, to guide them, to support them, and all those things. And the final one, number 4, is employee voice, which things like town halls, suggestion boxes, the main vehicle tends to be employee surveys. One of the things which often is mistaken with them, it's not all about the score. What it's really about is using the feedback to inform improvements and measuring those improvements.
Yeah, and that employee voice is so important, isn't it? For people to feel as though their views have been heard, that they are contributing towards an organisation. And of course, this is not just negative feedback. This is how does an organisation create the type of environment where people want to stick their hand up and say, I've got an idea for an improvement. I've got an idea where we can make things better around here, or how we can improve kind of customer services and such. But that doesn't come immediate, does it? Sometimes I think you have to lay the foundation for people to feel safe, comfortable, to actually stick their hands up and give their voice as well. Give me some thoughts maybe about how you might do that.
Yeah, the whole point really of employee voice is to go towards employee involvement and participation. So as you say, they feel comfortable to speak up and they feel that they have a say in their work. If you look at big change projects, they often fail because change is done to people rather than with people. The people who know the work best are those that actually do it. So if you have a change project for the call centre, guess what? You should involve the people who are in the call centre. I suppose that does link nicely back to the example I gave of surveys and the survey results. Because usually when the survey results are good, the leader goes, fine, I don't need to do anything then. But you're wrong, because what you do need to do is you need to see what you're doing well keep doing it, and then focus on getting that 85% up to a 90. And importantly, you can share that good practice with the rest of the organization. It's a great research base. If it's working in IT, for example, there's a great chance it will work in HR. And if your score is low, don't blame other people or say it was done at the wrong time. Take that feedback.
You touched on a little bit there and mentioned about motivation. So having an understanding of what motivates people, actually the kind of alignment strategy, how they look at your organisation and the reason that they have chosen to work for your organisation. That's kind of a critical part really of a manager's role, isn't it? To understand their team.
Broadly speaking, in terms of energy or motivation, I see it in two buckets, if you like. The first is what I call the Red Bull bucket. It's that instant hit. It's that kind of team huddle. It's the Martin Luther King speeches that gives people that kind of big galvanizing, come on, let's get together. That only lasts for so long. It's fine in short bursts, only lasts for so long. But then there is then the intrinsic, which you've touched upon. And it's what actually are people motivated by. Sometimes it's obvious, sometimes it can be a bit of a surprise. And I think if you look at things like Myers-Briggs personality profiling, it's quite broad brush. I mean, using myself as an example, I'm an incredible introvert. So I'm probably, from that score, the last kind of person you would have for chairing conferences and speaking at events, but I love doing that.
You do so well.
Thank you very much. Yes, but I love doing it. So from knowing what motivates me and understanding that, that you should give me much more of this kind of work, because that's going to energize me rather than give me kind of work that wouldn't energize me quite so much.
And I guess to use the kind of your Red Bull type part and then some of the more intrinsic, I guess there's a time and a place, isn't there, for using both of those. And you talked about earlier on change programs, for example, isn't it? There's a time when the change fatigue has set in, that in actual fact you do need some of those things that are going to bring the energy and kind of lift people up again in celebrating the achievements and the milestones and kind of what you've got. But actually over the longer term, and when you're thinking about kind of the resilience of your workforce and your organisation, you do have to rely on, don't you, some of those kind of the more fundamental basic kind of, is your own individual kind of purpose values aligned with the organisation, and is the individual getting out of the employment relationship something that is worthwhile for them on a kind of day-to-day basis? How do you think that managers could go about understanding their people on that type of level, I guess?
If I may give a specific example of a tool that I've been using, we started to use a motivational platform called Mojo, very aptly named for these times, because by Jove, we need to get our mojo back. Not just because loads of organisations are going through constant change, but of course because that pandemic thing you may just have heard of. In short, what you do is you take a survey. There's science behind it, which we can leave for another day. There's 9 recognised motivators. It tells you in order which you're motivated by more or less. Maybe you're more motivated by money, friendships, by being a free spirit. There's lots of others. And it then tells you how satisfied you are with those. So that really helps with performance conversations. Yeah. So if you take someone who is motivated by social purpose, for example, they would have searcher high. They want the meaning. Sometimes they'll take jobs that perhaps aren't quite so well paid because they want to help society. And then if you know their satisfaction scores, you can kind of focus on, let's keep doing these things really well if they're high. And if they're low, what things can we possibly do? So it's great for performance conversations. It's great for skills-based conversations. But one of the things we've just been using the tool for is to create project teams.
I've got an example perhaps of a very successful organisation. It's a hotel group that they have got their employee engagement scores are just through the roof. And if you think about actually the hotel industry, quite a lot of their workforce kind of low paid, high staff turnover, so not necessarily all of the factors that would naturally lead towards high engagement levels. But one of the things that they do is that they give 10% of an individual's time to do any job within reason, any job across the business that they are particularly interested in. So you might have somebody spending 10% of their time on reception, for example, because that is what really, really interests them. And it's fascinating, I think, to see some of the link between that and the engagement levels. They also happen to be number one on TripAdvisor for years and years and years. So again, you can see actually how that has a direct link through to business success and business performance around that. So certainly something for us to pay a lot of attention to, isn't it? Last question, if I may, is just talk to us really briefly about common traps that perhaps you see employers fall into when it comes to engaging their people.
Yes, very good question. So I would perhaps look at it in terms of the very famous George Bernard Shaw quote. To paraphrase, he talks about it's the illusion that communication takes place. And I think it is the illusion that engagement takes place. I mean, it's very easy just to, whop something on your intranet or send an all staff email and kind of go, tick, we've done that now. No, that's not it at all. And I think an awful lot of it is just about the basics. I mean, I've stopped being surprised now by talking to people who even work for some companies you would thought would be very good, that they don't do some of the basics, like have monthly one-to-ones. There's some of those things, they just don't have those conversations, even with the wealth of knowledge and experience shared about the pandemic and the importance of having catch-ups and well-being catch-ups. The amount of organisations that don't even do that, it's quite scary, really. So one of the things that I would be an evangelist for, and I would absolutely love to see, is in most organisations, of course, the senior people still get some sort of PRPs and profit-related pay. And I would love to see if it wasn't so much biased towards the amount of money that the organisation is making, but is biased towards them doing the right thing by their employees. So I think if you have some kind of scorecard approach, I think a percentage, and a decent percentage, would be, are you doing these things? Are you having regular one-to-ones with your employees? And if you're not having one-to-ones with your team, that should be, a percentage point or something kind of chalked off, because you need to do these basics. If you look at something like the Taylor Review of Work, the government-backed Taylor Review, which came out, I think it was 2 or 3 years ago now, that very much found that people want meaningful work. People come to work because they want to work. They want to have some kind of meaning and some kind of purpose. And I suppose the contract from the managers and the senior leaders is to do the basics, give them feedback for what they've done. People like these kinds of things. So I think an awful lot of it is the fact that people, are so busy chasing new customers and implementing new things and spending time on that they forget about what is seen as the basics, as conversations, one-to-ones and things like that. And, taking employee feedback seriously. If you get all of those things right, and if you loop all the way back to the start of this conversation about the 4 enablers of employee engagement, get those right. That is such a massive base for your organisation to succeed.
Yeah, the quality, isn't it, of some of those kind of foundation pieces, the quality of the discussion in the one-to-one and, your team meetings and such. How can you actually deliver that strategic narrative and get people really excited about the direction of the organisation? And how can you genuinely hear the feedback and that employee voice if you're not having those touch points?
Yeah. How does the internal comms team, for example, know what's going on unless people tell them? That's, it's one of those things that traditionally happens in organisations. A lot of things are someone else's responsibility. So communications is a responsibility, internal communications is responsibility of the internal comms team. So it's up to them to tell us how it's going. No, the reason why we've moved very much into internal social media with Workplace and Yammer and things like that is so everybody can tell the story of the organisation. It's, and it's a common trap across all kinds of different work projects and work programs. It's someone else's responsibility. It's in buckets when it really is. There's so much kind of crossover for these things.
It's been wonderful to speak to you about this. It's a brilliant subject, isn't it? And one that is relevant for all organisations across all sectors, across all countries as well, isn't it? So it's been brilliant to talk to you. Thank you so much for spending some time with us.
Thank you, Rick. It's been a pleasure.
Wonderful. Thank you so much, Nicholas. Bye.
All right. Bye.